Welcome, religion enthusiasts and curious minds alike. Today, we embark on a journey to explore and understand some complex aspects of one of the world's major religions, Islam. This rich tapestry of faith, culture, and history is as diverse as it is profound. And like any religion, it is subject to a variety of interpretations and practices. In our quest for understanding, we'll delve into some Quranic verses and teachings and discuss how these have been understood and applied in different contexts. We'll also touch on some controversial aspects and how they have sometimes been manipulated to justify extremist actions. As we navigate the intricate labyrinth of Islamic legal traditions, we'll attempt to shed light on the debates that surround them. As we dive into the discussion, remember it's not about passing judgments, but about fostering understanding. So, let's set aside our preconceptions and explore this fascinating religion with open minds and respectful dialogue. At the heart of Islam is the Quran. Certain verses, such as Surah At-Tawbah 9:29, have been viewed as not promoting peace. This verse has been a point of contention due to its demand for the subjugation of non-Muslims, but like any religious text, the Quran must be understood in its historical and cultural context. You see, when this verse was revealed, Muslims were under attack, and the verse provided guidelines for self-defense. Furthermore, it's important to consider the diversity of interpretations within the Muslim community. Many scholars argue that such verses are specific to the time and circumstances of their revelation and should not be used as a blanket rule for all times. They emphasize the Quranic principle of no compulsion in religion, which is stated in Surah Al-Baqarah 2:256. This verse has been interpreted as an endorsement of religious freedom, suggesting that the Quran's teachings are not monolithic, but rather nuanced and multifaceted. Another verse often under scrutiny is Surah An-Nisa 4:34, which in some interpretations allows men to discipline their wives. However, many scholars and Muslims argue that this verse has been misinterpreted and misused. They point to the Prophet Muhammad's own conduct as evidence, who never struck a woman and treated his wives with respect and kindness. In the Quran, there are also many teachings that promote peace, tolerance, and respect for all human beings. For example, Surah Al-Hujurat 49:13 states, "O mankind, indeed we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous of you." This verse promotes the idea of unity in diversity and the importance of righteousness over any form of discrimination. Remember, interpretations can vary widely, and the majority of Muslims advocate peace. It's essential to engage with the Quran and Islamic teachings with an open mind, understanding the complexity and nuance within this rich tradition. Sadly, extremist interpretations have at times led to acts of violence and terrorism. Throughout history, we've seen instances where a misguided few have twisted the teachings of Islam to justify horrendous acts. These actions range from suicide bombings to hostage takings, and from acts of intimidation to outright wars. It's important to understand that these individuals represent a fraction of the over 1.5 billion Muslims worldwide. Their interpretations are often based on a skewed understanding of the religion, fueled by political, social, or economic grievances. They are the outliers, not the norm. Mainstream Islam, practiced by the overwhelming majority of Muslims, promotes peace, justice, and the sanctity of life. These extremist actions are unequivocally condemned by Muslim scholars and communities around the globe. Such actions, however, are the result of a small minority and are not representative of Islam as a whole. Another point of discussion often centers around Islamic legal traditions. This intricate system of law, known as Sharia, has been interpreted and implemented in various ways across the Islamic world. It's important to note that this legal framework is not monolithic, but rather consists of diverse interpretations that have evolved over centuries. One aspect of Sharia law frequently brought into focus is the use of corporal punishment for certain offenses. This includes practices such as lashing for theft or public intoxication and stoning in cases of adultery. These punishments, known as hudud penalties, are seen by some as a literal interpretation of Quranic law. However, it's crucial to understand that these are not universally accepted or applied within the Muslim world. Many scholars and communities argue for a more metaphorical interpretation, or for the use of these punishments only under the most stringent of circumstances. Another contentious issue relates to the death penalty for offenses like apostasy and blasphemy. Critics argue that these laws contravene modern human rights standards, particularly the rights to freedom of speech and religion. It's important to remember, though, that these laws are not uniformly implemented across the Islamic world. Many Muslim-majority countries do not enforce these penalties, reflecting a spectrum of views within the Muslim community. The discussion around these traditions and their compatibility with contemporary human rights norms is complex and multifaceted. It involves not only religious interpretation, but also cultural, historical, and political factors. It's crucial to approach this conversation with an understanding of this complexity and a commitment to respectful dialogue. These traditions raise complex questions about the intersection of religion, culture, and human rights. As we conclude our discussion, let's remember the key criticisms we've discussed. We've examined specific Quranic verses and teachings that some perceive as not promoting peace, and we've delved into instances where extremist interpretations of Islam have led to acts of violence. We also highlighted elements of Islamic legal traditions, such as corporal punishment or death penalties for certain offenses, and presented these laws in the context of criticism and the debate on modern human rights standards. Throughout this exploration, it's been essential to remember that these issues are complex and multifaceted. They require open and respectful dialogue, understanding, and a willingness to listen. It's equally important to acknowledge that the beliefs and practices we've discussed do not represent every individual within the Muslim community. Indeed, diversity of thought exists within the Muslim community just as in any other. We encourage you to engage in informed and respectful conversations about religion.